conversation is still on business. Now we're moving it to another part, and we're talking about business education as a tool for youth empowerment. But we're not going to do this alone. We have our guest seated with us live on set. His name is Damilola Hamid Balogun. He is the Chief Executive Officer of YSDC. Good morning, Damilola.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you doing? Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
All right. So before we came back live, we were having a conversation on YSDC. And just before we jump into business education as a tool of youth development, I'd like that you tell us what it is and what you guys do.
Okay. So basically, YSDC is centered around educating youth on United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. As the name implies, Youth Sustainability Development Conference. It's a conference where we bring youth together across the world and then try to make them understand concept of United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, try to make them understand the nitty-gritty when it comes to public-private partnership. And then you would agree with me that the larger percentage of the world are made up of youth, and youth actually are major stakeholders when it comes to international sustainable development. Being that you have the international government, you have the national government, you have the corporate entities, and you also have the public sector. So it is only crucial that if half of the population are not carried along, then achieving the goal really might not be feasible. So what we do really is then to empower youth, make sure that, okay, this is what you're passionate about, provide them with the resources with our partners, and then try to make sure that they make impact within their local community, which would then transcend to global development.
Okay, so youth are essentially at the center of what you do.
Yes.
With the YSDC.
Yes,
so when we bring that into the conversation of business education, first of all, on what number of the SDGs does that fall into, business education? Okay,
so I think business education, you can go far ahead. You can say maybe SDG 8, decent work, SDG 9, industry innovation, and then
education as well, maybe.
Education, quality education as well. And then the center of it all, SDG 4.7, which is education for sustainable development. Because achieving anything really has to come from awareness. If you enter a community today, you tell them the SDG, like, okay, what's the meaning of the SDG? So you have to educate them first. It's when they understand, then they are able to then, okay, think towards that line and begin to take action towards achieving that goal. So at the center of anything really, in business, politics, sustainable development, anything, education is crucial. And so,
Okay, so now let's bring it to the conversation on business education that we're having this morning to you and to the youths that you have been teaching on, sustainability development goals. What is business education?
All right, so in my opinion, business education really means that you're basically trying to teach people the necessary skill when it comes to management, when it comes to corporate management, when it comes to non-corporate management. And then when people hear business, what comes to their mind? Okay, maybe a transaction, you're buying and you're selling. However simple that might look, it's not that easy. It's not that easy. So it goes beyond business. You have to understand who you're selling to. That's where the education comes in. You have to understand who you're selling to, because you can't sell to everyone. You have to have a targeted audience. You have to manage your team. You have to outline how you want to sell what you're selling, and then you have to as well outline where you want to be within a few years, and if you want, then proceed as time goes on. So all of these things comes from business education, understanding your strategy, understanding your culture, just as ethnic groups, they say, for example, the Yoruba, they wear Ankara, for example. So within a business, you should also have your culture, something that makes you stand out, something that makes you distinct from other businesses. And I think that's really important, and that's where the whole concept of business education comes in.
Why is this important for youth in our country, for instance, in a country like Nigeria, to be empowered with this kind of education?
I think really, in the world, most times, the private sector really tends to always outtake the public sector. So when we talk of Nigeria being a capitalist state, it means that, okay, It means we're getting support more from the private sector, and then the public sector is really supporting. So seeing that part is really thriving, it is then important that a lot of persons are educated in that line. And again, when you hear business, people feel like, okay, business education, okay, they want to teach us how to sell and buy. You have to also understand that if you're also an employee, because within a business, you have to understand that, okay, this is how we operate, this is how we do what we want to do, this is how we then meet our profit targets, this is how we do this is how we do that. So at the end of the day, it is really important because the private sector, again, they are very much responsible for the high income that is being generated in Nigeria. And seeing that that's where the future lies, it is important that a lot of youths are being empowered, not because maybe they might become CEOs, or because not everybody will be CEOs, not because they might become employers, but because also they'll be employees. And having a business education as well, even if you're serving in the public sector, you're able to understand basic business ethics that would not only transform into generating more profits for where you work, but will also make where you work up to standard.
Yeah, so I like where you have brought that conversation from. So who do you think needs business education? Because I'm looking at an age bracket now. Why should they even do it? Because, I mean, you said something about buying and selling. That's what everybody thinks, that I don't need to go to this class. I don't need to learn anything about it. Is it not simple for me to open a shop and start doing that? What's the need for branding? What's the need for all of these things? So, who needs it and why?
Okay, so I think everyone needs it. Everyone needs it. And then it starts from the fact that we begin to teach these things from the basic schools. And when I say teaching, I don't mean teaching like the usual way we have it. Teaching practicality, like let's say the practical thing. Because so you can put the junior ones or the younger ones, tell them, okay, imagine you're a CEO of a company, give them case studies. Put them in the position of a CEO or of a CFO, Chief Financial Officer. Make them understand that, okay, this is currently an issue. So the basic way, think about it, how would you be able to handle this? So something as practical as that, beginning from the start, really goes a long way. And so everyone, again, needs it. Youth, adults, everyone needs it. Because, of course, the income a country is able to generate determines the level as to which that country is placed, not only in the continental scene, but also at the international level. And they say the major power right now in this century is economic power. If they're able to tell you some great companies in the US, how they are able to even build a GDP that is bigger than that of Africa, just one company having a net worth that is bigger than the whole continent, it means that the level of business education there is really sharp. And that's what's promoting innovation and invention. So it is really important, whatever age you are. And like Nelson Mandela said, he said education is the best weapon to fight anything you want to fight. So poverty, education, business goes together. So at the end of the day, it is really just important because the country is as good as its citizens.
All right. So, when we're saying that when we're having the conversation of empowering youth with business education, I think it's essentially meaning that we are saying that we have to grow our entrepreneurs in our community. We have to grow more entrepreneurs that would better, because you made a good point about the private sector bringing in a lot of income to this country. Now, considering what is going on in our society, for instance, with a lot of get-rich-quick schemes, do you understand that it seems to me that a lot of youth are now being involved in? How, for instance, does the YSDC sensitize youth in grooming more entrepreneurs, taking away this attitude of get-rich-quick schemes? How would you say our community or society can better groom youth to be entrepreneurs with integrity and dignity, and shine them away from get-rich-quick schemes?
All right, so I think the major cause of that is the larger rate of poverty.
Okay.
And this is where policies and governments comes in. So, I mean, there are little things. The private sector is doing very, very well, to be honest, as far as Nigeria is concerned. And so, as I speak to you today, youths are made up of the largest number in Nigeria, and almost 80% of youth are unemployed. So you can see the connecting factor why a lot of them are into the get quick rich scheme, and then they just want to, okay, let's just get this money and do what we want to do right now. So the major thing there is poverty. So if government can come in with policies to like make sure that poverty is being eradicated, and I hear here and there that there are some programs empowering youth from the governments, from in the agri space, in the computer literacy space and all that, but really all those things are not really channeled to the major thing. So I was talking to a friend one time. I told him that, okay, one of the things why is this you can do later on is to say, okay, for example, we can say we want to empower youth. So I empower you as a person. For example, you come, I'll empower you, I teach you necessary digital skills, you're able to understand coding, you're able to understand basics of graphics design, and then I let you go. That's what many empowering schemes do. So one major thing that can crop that really is, I'm saying out there for any entity that is really willing to do this, and I mean a conglomeration of all of this would really transform into tackling what you just said. So once you empower them, why don't you then build a network of employers that would need your services? So for example, I empower you, I just don't let you go. I also try to like reach out to some companies that would need your services when it comes to graphics design, when it comes to video editing and all that. And they pay you a minimum wage of maybe, I think current minimum wage in Nigeria is 30,000. So they pay you by that for a certain hour you get to work. So that way you're actually making change, the real change. So you're not just teaching them the skill alone. You're also able to like connect them with potential employers. And if, for example, a lot of non-profits that are focused on youth empowerment are able to do this, I mean, it will drastically reduce the rate of youth unemployment and also make sure that they groom the right set of persons. Because truth be told, all these cryptocurrencies, all of these schemes, all this forex and all that, I mean, they wouldn't really last long. I was still telling my friend again that the truth is, fortunately or unfortunately, the world is built around some people that run it. And so once they don't agree to it, it really is not going to fly. So at the end of the day, if, for example, a country like the United States can say, okay, we are really passionate, we really want to do this cryptocurrency, we really want to do this, but once they don't agree, they don't do it. And what determines that? Their economic power. Where does their economic power come from? The set of citizens that come.
Right.
How does the set of citizens come? The level of business education they understand as they grow.
Interesting.
Okay, so what are the roles of educators, parents, teachers, people that have non-profits that are empowering young people? What are their roles? How can they be better equipped to give the youth empowerment? Because, I mean, I see a lot. I mean, you just mentioned something about not just equipping people with skills, but also setting them up. But I see a lot of people doing what you said earlier, that they just give them skills and that's it. And sometimes you realize that some of these people don't even have funding to do the business that they have gone to learn, and then it goes back to zero. So how can parents, educators, and every other person tap into this business education so that they can, equip the young people and the youths generally?
All right, so the idea I just said, all this like setting them up, it's not as easy as it seems. I mean, it requires, especially when you're working in a country like Nigeria, it requires you having double determination to do what you want to do. But if you're really passionate about change, I think it's something you can get to do. So I think the roles of parents, really, educators and all that, is because most times they really don't know these things.
Yeah.
They really don't know. And so there's something that says you cannot give what you don't have.
Yes.
I can only give you what I have. I can only teach you what I know.
Yes.
So their role really is that they themselves, they have to get subjected to understand the importance of these things. And so maybe schools across Lagos, across Nigeria, across Ogun, across Oyo begin to prioritize business education. Because business is going nowhere. In the next 100 years, there will still be transaction between persons. And so it is important that, as well as a country, we build our economic power. And so it is just important that they begin to know these things. And so their role again is that I just think they have to also understand that this is really important, and then begin to teach their children, their students, and every other person. For example, my younger brother is in primary 6, and then it was last week I told him that, okay, so go and write about a business that you want to do when you grow up. And he's like, oh, I don't want to do a business, I want to be a doctor. I'm like, yeah, you can be a doctor and still own a business. And when you're even a doctor, you still have to manage your people and all that. And then he started writing it. I told him to type it out. And week in, week out, we tried to like improve on what he did. I said, so how do you get money for this thing you want to do? He's like, people will come now, they will dash me money. And I'm like, no, it doesn't work that way. You have to create an exchange value. And then he's beginning to understand that. So something as basic as that, you do it for your young ones, you do it for your young one, everyone does, then, well, we'll be on the right path.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah. All right. As we wrap up this interview with you, very insightful interview, I must say. I want you to look, for some of our viewers, our young viewers this morning, they're thinking of starting a business. I want you to give them any general advice that you can.
All right. So my general advice is, it's never easy. It's not easy. Again, especially when you have to deal with stuff in a country like Nigeria, you go through a lot. You go through a lot. And so one thing I can really see is that try to do a lot of partnership. Be open to partnership. Partnership, they say two heads are better than one. And most times the best of ideas come from collaboration. Be open to partnership. Think of it, reach out to a potential partner. Try to make sure that, okay, you're able to agree on something. And so it benefits both sides. And then, they say people like hard work and consistency. So if, for example, you're selling, as basic as it is, you're selling a perfume oil, and then you're doing that. I mean, I have plans as to how you want to go wider as you go. Because as a student, I understand, for example, you can start selling beats. Then maybe have plans. Just don't do it because you want to get money now. Because the money you're getting now, you get to a time you don't get it again. It feels like, it's not making sense again, and you want to do something else. You're inconsistent, and that can set into frustration and maybe just let you go. So just open partnership, stay consistent, and be hardworking, and make sure to be very transparent, very, very transparent. To be honest, to make the big money you want to make requires patience, honesty, because if you really want to be honest, you won't get the big money you want to get at a go. Consistency, honesty goes a long way. And on the long run, it's really going to make sense. Not just for you, but for the country as a whole.
Thank you so much, Damilola Hamid Balogun, for joining us this morning. This is where we wrap up the conversation with Damilola on business education, as a tool for youth empowerment.